D. Use of funds. 1. In general, in the case of a state not described in paragraph 2, such state shall use the grant funds for each of the following activities. A. Identifying each employer in the state that will transform its business and program models from employing people with disabilities using special certificates to employing people with disabilities in competitive, integrated employment settings, or a setting involving a combination of competitive integrated employment and integrated services. B. Implementing a service delivery infrastructure to support people with disabilities who have been employed under special certificates through such a transformation, including providing enhanced integrated services to support people with the most significant disabilities. C. Expanding competitive integrated employment and integrated services to be provided to such people as a result of transformations described in subparagraph A. 2. States receiving amount from reservation. A state that, as of the date of enactment of this Act, is determined by the Secretary to have phased out or to be in the process of phasing out the use of special certificates in the state, shall use the grant funds for expansion of competitive integrated employment and integrated services to be provided to people with disabilities. E. Members of the Advisory Council. A state receiving a grant under this section shall, for the purpose described in subsection C. 2, C. 3, establish an advisory council composed of the following. 1. People with disabilities, including people with intellectual or developmental disabilities and people with mental health disabilities, who are or were employed under a special certificate, who shall comprise not less than 25% of the members of such advisory council. Two, family members of a person with an intellectual, developmental, or mental health disability who is or was employed under a special certificate or is employed in competitive integrated employment. 3. An employer providing competitive integrated employment. 4. An employer providing employment under special certificates. 5. Representatives of relevant state agencies with expertise in competitive integrated employment, disability organizations with such expertise, and disability-related offices and groups with such expertise. Sec. 22202. Definitions. In this part, 1. Competitive integrated employment. The term competitive integrated employment has the meaning given such term in Section 7(5) of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, 29 U.S.C. 705(5). 2. Employee, employer. The terms employee and employer have the meanings given such terms in Section 3 of the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, 29 U.S.C. 203. 3. Integrated community participation and wraparound services, integrated services. The terms integrated community participation and wraparound services or integrated services mean services for people with disabilities that are a. designed to assist such people in developing skills and abilities to reside successfully in home and community-based settings, b. provided in accordance with a person-centered written plan of care, c. created using evidence-based practices that lead to such people, I. maintaining competitive integrated employment, 2. achieving independent living, or 3. maximizing socioeconomic self-sufficiency, optimal independence, and full participation in the community. D. Provided in a community location that is not specifically intended for people with disabilities. E. Provided in a location that I. allows the people receiving the services to interact with people without disabilities to the fullest extent possible. And 2. makes it possible for the people receiving the services to access community resources that are not specifically intended for people with disabilities and to have the same opportunity to participate in the community as people who do not have a disability. And F. provided in multiple locations to allow the individual receiving the services to have options, thereby I. optimizing individual initiative, autonomy, and independence, and 2. facilitating choice regarding services and supports, and choice regarding the provider of such services. 4. People with disabilities. The term people with disabilities includes individuals described in Section 14, c. 1, of the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, 29 U.S.C. 214, c. 1. 5. State. The term state has the meaning given the term in Section 3 of the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, 29 U.S.C. 203. Part for recruitment, education and training, retention, and career advancements for the direct care workforce Sec. (22301) Definitions. In this part, 1. CT definitions. The terms evidence-based and work-based learning have the meanings given such terms in Section 3 of the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act of 2006, 20 U.S.C. 2302. 2. WIOA definitions. The terms career pathway, career planning, individual with a barrier to employment, local board, older individual, on-the-job training, recognized post-secondary credential, and state board have the meanings given such terms in Section 3 of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, 29 U.S.C. 3102. 3. Other definitions. A. Career and Technical Education School. The term career and technical education school has the meaning given the term eligible recipient in Section 3 of the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act of 2006, 20 U.S.C. 2302. B. Direct care worker. The term direct care worker means I. A direct support professional. 2. Any worker who provides direct care services in home or community-based setting. 3. A respite care provider who provides short-term support and care to an individual in order to provide relief to a family caregiver. 4. A palliative care worker. V. A direct care worker, as defined in Section 799B of the Public Health Service Act, 42 U.S.C. (795P) or 6. An individual in any other position or job related to those described in clauses I through 6, as determined by the Secretary in consultation with the Secretary of Health and Human Services acting through the Administrator for the Administration for Community Living. C. Eligible entity. The term eligible entity means an entity that is I. A state, 2. A labor organization, a joint labor management organization, or a multi-employer training and education fund, 3. A non-profit organization with experience in aging, disability, supporting the rights and interests of direct care workers, or training or educating direct care workers. 4. An Indian tribe or tribal organization, as defined in Section 4 of the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act, 25 U.S.C. (5304) v. An urban Indian organization, as defined in Section 4 of the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act, 25 U.S.C. 1603. 6. A state board or local board. 7. An area agency on aging, as defined in Section 102 of the Older Americans Act of 1965. 42 U.S.C. 3002. 8. When in partnership with an entity described in any of clauses I through 7. I. An institution of higher education, as defined in Section 101 of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1001, or Section 102, A. 1. B. of such Act, 20 U.S.C. (1002) A. 1. B. or 2. A career and technical education school, or 9. A consortium of entities listed in any of clauses I through 7.